Good morning. Let's continue and finish this chapter 14 about the heart. Now let's start talking about diffusion of the fluid out of capillary. This is your arterial, and as you know, after arterial we have capillary. This capillary has two ends, one end toward the artery, one end toward the vein. So it's called arterial side of the capillary, venual side of the capillary. Exchange happens at the level of capillary. The cells here, they are waiting for oxygen and nutrition, and after that exchange, blood is going to get to the venule. When this fluid gets out and get to these cells out here, then we are losing fluid. Don't you think that fluid should come back again to the capillary and leave through the venule? If you keep losing fluid at the capillary and this fluid doesn't come back to this vessel, then after a while you don't have any fluid inside your blood vessels. And if fluid is going to accumulate outside the capillary, it's going to create edema and it's going to cause swelling. So what is going to make this fluid to get out? Well, the answer is the hydrostatic pressure that here shows with the PC is pretty large at the beginning of the capillary. If you remember, we said that at the beginning of the capillary, the pressure is around 30 or 40. And this picture shows around 30. So there is 30 millimeters of mercury force trying to push this fluid out. As I'm sure many of you remember, the protein inside the blood never leaves capillary. Protein always stays inside the capillary. And this protein is going to create a force we call oncotic pressure. Do you remember oncotic pressure from the very first week of this course? Oncotic pressure is a pressure caused by protein. Protein does not leave the capillary, and protein always pulls the water toward itself. If this is a capillary, here is the protein. Protein pulls the water toward itself. The more protein you have inside the blood, the more water is going to come inside the capillary. Hydrostatic pressure trying to push the water out, protein trying to pull it back in. Now let's take a look. Here is hydrostatic pressure trying to push this blood out with a force of 30. Protein trying to pull it back in with a force of 26. This positive and negative just shows the direction of the blood flow. If direction is outside, it shows positive. If direction is inside, it shows negative. So the two major forces would be hydrostatic pressure and oncotic pressure. When fluid comes out and accumulates outside the capillary, there is not a lot of room. So this fluid, when accumulates here, this fluid is going to push back. If you're inside the bath and it's packed, then you're standing by the door and it's going to push back. Someone's trying to come in, you say, hey, there is no room. Realize that when fluid trying to get out of the capillary, some of this fluid which are already outside, they are trying to push it back. That is going to create 1 millimeter of mercury of force. We show again negative because it is moving toward inside. 26 units of force trying to push water in because of protein. 1 unit of force trying to push water in because of accumulation of fluid here. So that means now we have 27 altogether. Also, we have some protein already outside the capillary. Protein already outside the capillary, they're trying to pull the water out also. And that is going to create a force of 3. So now if you add 30 plus 3, it's going to be 33, and 26 plus 1 is going to be 27. So 33 minus 27 would be 6. So as you can see, the net pressure is plus 6. That means a force of 6 millimeters of mercury trying to push blood out. This is toward the arterial side of capillary. If you move toward the venous side of capillary, that means in this area, force is going to change. Since you already lost some fluid, now the hydrostatic pressure is going to drop. From 30 is going to drop to 25. You lost some fluid, so therefore force is going to decrease. And when you lose water, protein become concentrated, and now the force of oncotic pressure increases. This force becomes 32. 1 and 3 is going to stay the same because, again, the accumulation of the fluid outside the capillary and also the amount of protein outside the cell stays the same. So this 2 force is constant. Now, if you want to add 25 millimeters of mercury trying to push the fluid out, 3 is going to pull this water out. It's going to be 28. And this one is going to be 33. 33 minus 28 is 5. So that means at the arterial side, there is a net of 6 millimeters of mercury trying to push the fluid out, and then in the venous side, there are 5 millimeters of mercury force trying to push the fluid back. That's why fluid is going to come back. Here's your capillary. A force of +6 push this water out. A force of 5 is going to bring this blood back in. Do you see that there is more force in the arterial side and there is less force toward venous side? In other words, more fluid is going to get out and less fluid is going to come back in. Let's put a number. For instance, if 100 ml of fluid is going to get out, 99 ml is going to come back and 1 ml is going to stay outside. Imagine if every time you are walking and you drop 1 penny, after a while you have no money. Although it's going to take a while, but you're going to lose all. So what we're going to do with this 1 extra ml? The answer is lymphatic vessel. This 1 ml is going to get inside the lymphatic vessel, and as you know, lymphatic vessel finally is going to drain inside the vena cava, the biggest vein in our body. So the point here is this: the force that pushed this fluid out is slightly bigger than the force that brings the fluid back in. That extra fluid is going to get inside the lymphatic vessel, and lymphatic vessel finally is going to get to vena cava. These forces that I just mentioned, this hydrostatic pressure, this oncotic pressure, these are called Starling forces. The Starling forces are the forces that move your fluid out of the capillary or bring the fluid back inside the capillary. Now, let's change the gear and talk about blood flow in different organs. Remember, we said in average, my cardiac output is 5 liters. Out of these 5 liters that leaves left ventricle, they're going to come in and they're going to go to different organs. For instance, around 15% is going to go to the brain, which is around 750 ml of the blood. 5% of this total cardiac output is going to go to heart. 25% is going to go to kidney. 25% is going to go to GI system. 25% is going to the skeletal system. And 5% is going to go to skin. So that's how you're going to distribute this blood to different organs. And then the blood is going to come back again to the right atrium. The point I'm trying to make here is this: what if your skeletal muscle needs more blood? What if you are doing exercise and you need to increase blood flow to the skeletal muscle? What if the cerebral activity goes up and you need more blood? How are we going to do that? How are we going to change the distribution of this blood to different organs? Well, the answer is we have 3 strategies. One is by closing this blood to the skin or blood to the skeletal muscle, you're going to shift the blood to the other organs. The second is increase your cardiac output. Instead of 5 liters, make your heart to beat stronger and faster. So let's say, for instance, if your cardiac output is going to change to 7 liters, then 50% of 7 liters would be 1050 ml. So instead of 750 in normal circulation, it's going to receive 1000 ml of the blood. So by increasing cardiac output, you can give more blood to any of these organs you want to. Or you can use combination of both of them. Close one artery and distribute this blood to other organs and increase cardiac output. So that's how we're going to make sure every organ is going to receive the amount of blood that they need to. To control blood flow, we use 2 different mechanisms. One is called intrinsic control, or it's called local control. The other one is called extrinsic control. The name explains what it is. Intrinsic control, local control, is a control at the level of the organ. Extrinsic control, that means other part of the body is going to control how much blood this organ will receive or the other one. Who is the one that controls? The answer is sympathetic nervous system mainly. Sympathetic nervous system, by closing the artery or opening the artery, remember alpha 1 is going to close, beta 2 is going to open. If I'm running, I don't need to shift blood to skin. My artery that goes to the skin will be closed off. As a result, blood is going to get shifted to the other organs. So sympathetic activity would be a main extrinsic control. Endocrine system. We can release some chemicals, it's called vasoactive substances, and those chemicals, they can close or open vessels. So by releasing some chemicals, my body can control blood flow in different organs. So let's start with intrinsic control first. We have 3 ways to control blood flow locally: autoregulation, active hyperemia, reactive hyperemia. What does that mean? In the case of autoregulation, an organ itself can maintain blood flow by changing the pressure inside the arteriole. Some organs, they are so important that they have to be able to control their own blood flow. For instance, your heart, your brain. If I get stabbed and I start losing blood, my brain is going to say, yes, I know you're losing blood, but I don't care if you lose your muscle or if you lose your skin or if you lose your GI system. I need my blood. My heart says the same thing because they are being auto-regulated. They can control the size of the arteriole and as a result control their blood flow. The organs that show auto-regulation are kidneys, brain, skeletal muscle, and heart. The kidney has auto-regulation only during non-emergency situation, unfortunately. During emergency situation, kidney is going to lose the privilege. Skeletal muscle only during exercise has auto-regulation. At rest, skeletal muscle doesn't have this privilege. But brain and heart, always they have their auto-regulation. So among these four examples here, brain and heart, in the normal situation or emergency, always they keep these auto-regulation privileges. In emergency, when you're losing blood, kidney is one of the most important organs that may die because auto-regulation support would be removed from kidney during the emergency. What is active hyperemia? The amount of blood that goes to organ depends on their metabolic activity. The more metabolic activity an organ or tissue has, the more blood should get. For instance, when you are thinking, a specific part of the brain, frontal lobe, needs more blood compared to, let's say, temporal lobe or compared to occipital lobe. Active hyperemia explains that based on metabolic activity, some organs, they need to get more blood. And finally, regarding reactive hyperemia, let's say you are running and blood is going to get shifted toward your muscle. As a result, other organs, they're receiving less blood. After you stop running and everything goes back to normal, those organs that they received less blood, they go through reactive hyperemia. That means their blood vessel is going to open up even bigger than normal situation to bring more blood to that organ because that organ was receiving less blood. As a result, accumulated some oxygen debt. And now I have to bring more blood to that organ to take care of that oxygen debt. And those organs is going to show hyperemia, but is a reactive hyperemia. Reaction toward what? Reaction toward oxygen debt. So there are three ways to control the blood flow in different organs: autoregulation, active hyperemia, and reactive hyperemia. All three of them can be explained by two theories. The first theory, which is called metabolic control mechanism, explains autoregulation, active and reactive hyperemia. The idea of this one is this, that delivery of oxygen to an organ should match the consumption of oxygen by that tissue. The more oxygen that tissue is going to consume, the more blood should get to that organ. When an organ does metabolism, that organ is going to release some chemical like adenosine, CO2, proton, potassium, lactate, and those metabolites open up the arteriole. Each tissue uses a specific metabolite. For instance, when the heart is functioning, heart is going to release some adenosine. When adenosine goes up, coronary artery is going to open because when you create adenosine, that means your metabolism is up. When the PO2 drops in the heart, that means your metabolism is up. You're using a lot of oxygen. As a result, dropping PO2 or increasing adenosine is going to open up coronary artery even more. In the case of brain, however, when PCO2 goes up, brain understands that my metabolism is up. As a result, the artery that comes to brain is going to open up. This table is pretty interesting because it shows different metabolites that controls different organs. As we said in the case of heart, hypoxia, when the oxygen is low, our adenosine is going to tell the coronary artery to open up. Sympathetic in the case of heart has not that much of a role. In the case of brain, again, sympathetic has very little role. The main player to change the artery to the brain would be CO2, which when CO2 goes up is going to add to the water, is going to create bicarbonates that is going to break down and increase the acid. As a result, the pH in the brain is going to go down, and that is going to make you to open up the vessels of the brain. In the case of a skeletal muscle, we said the control happens only during emergency, not in a normal situation. At rest, a skeletal muscle has no privilege. Sympathetic is going to control how much blood is going to go to a skeletal muscle. Alpha 1 is going to close, so less blood is going to go to the skeletal muscle. Beta 2 is going to open, and more blood is going to go to the skeletal muscle. However, when you're doing exercise, when you're running, then a skeletal muscle has autoregulation. Then the skeletal muscle says, no, I tell you how much blood I need. Sympathetic cannot tell me what I need. At that moment, when the skeletal muscle doing exercise is going to accumulate lactate, is going to accumulate potassium or adenosine. These are the one that, when accumulates inside the skeletal muscle, is going to open up the arteriole and bring more blood to the skeletal muscle system. Poor skin doesn't have any autoregulation. Destiny of the blood to the skin always being controlled by, of course, sympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic is going to tell this skin how much blood you can get. Pulmonary would be very interesting. We're going to talk about pulmonary toward the end of this chapter. For now, past this one. And then in the kidney, we said in the kidney, only this privilege happens when the kidney is addressed. During emergency, kidney is going to lose the privilege, and sympathetic is going to control how much blood is going to come to the kidney. That's why, as I said repeatedly before, during emergency, the biggest fear for people who work in emergency room is kidney will be damaged very soon when you lose blood, because as soon as emergency happens, if someone gets shot or stabbed and lose blood, then kidney is going to lose the privilege. The artery that goes to kidney is going to close off. As a result, kidney is going to receive less blood, and there's a chance that kidney is going to go through necrosis. We said there are two theories that explains local control. One is metabolic control. That means based on the oxygen consumption and the level of activity, organs, they release some metabolites, and those metabolites, they control how much blood that organ can get. Now, the second theory is called myogenic control. What does that mean? Let's say this is the arteriole that goes to an organ. Can be any organ, let's say to the kidney. If more blood comes here, as a result, your artery is going to bulge up. The more blood comes here and is going to push this artery to open up, arteriole doesn't like that. As soon as you open up the arteriole doesn't like it, is going to fight back, is going to go to contraction to keep the size of the arteriole. So the idea is, if the pressure goes up to control blood flow, artery is going to increase resistance, and when resistance goes up, the blood flow is going to go down. I can explain this one using law of Laplace. That would be very important. Now, listen to me here. Let's say this is an artery, and inside the artery, of course, we have blood. How much force this blood is applying to this vessel? How much force? If you're thinking the amount of force that applies to this one is equal to blood pressure, you're wrong. Laplace said the amount of force that you apply to this vessel is more than P, is a P times radius. That's the amount of force that you apply to this wall, and that is called wall tension and shows with the T. So Laplace said the amount of force that you apply to the wall of blood vessels is more than blood pressure, is a blood pressure times R. Why is this so important? Because it shows if I increase the radius, the amount of force that apply to this wall is going to increase. Now think about it. If more blood comes in, and as a result your arteriole is going to bulge and pressure goes up, and as a result radius goes up, the wall tension is going to go up also, and my artery doesn't like it. To fight back, artery is going to go to contraction to bring down the radius, to make the radius to become smaller. As a result, when my radius goes down, my T is going to go back to normal. So based on the law of Laplace, we can say to make sure the force against the wall stays the same, my artery is going to go to contraction to decrease the radius. When the radius goes down, the T is going to go down. As a result, blood flow is going to stay the same. So what I'm trying to tell you is I can explain myogenic mechanism using this wall tension or law of Laplace. Again, when the pressure goes up, the tension is going to go up, and if you're going to bring the tension back in, you have to decrease the size of radius. When you decrease the size of radius, then the tension also is going to decrease. So now we are done with intrinsic control. Let's talk about extrinsic control. We said extrinsic control is shown in the resting skeletal muscle and the cutaneous circulation. Also, extrinsic control is shown in kidney. During emergency, kidney is going to lose the privilege. Extrinsic control is through two mechanisms, nervous system and endocrine system. The main player would be here sympathetic nervous system that use alpha-1 receptor, or epinephrine that comes from adrenal gland and use beta-2 receptor. Let me remind you one more time, sympathetic nervous system releases norepinephrine, and norepinephrine has a very high affinity for alpha-1. When norepinephrine sits on alpha-1, causes vasoconstriction. Epinephrine, that mainly comes from adrenal gland, has a high affinity for beta-2. Epinephrine is going to sit on beta-2, and beta-2 is going to cause dilation. There are some chemical, it's called vasoactive chemical, that we categorize this one as part of the endocrine. For instance, histamine. Histamine is released due to trauma, and when histamine is released, it's going to constrict arteriole, but it's going to open up the vein. If this is the artery, and this is the capillary, and if this is the vein, if the vein is going to get closed, so less blood is going to go, so blood is going to accumulate here. As a result, we're going to have more filtration. So histamine is going to close off venule, is going to open up the arteriole, so blood is going to stay inside the capillary longer. As a result, filtration is going to go up, and as a result, you're going to lose more blood outside. Bradykinin does exactly the same thing. Bradykinin also is going to close venule and increase arteriole, as a result, increase the filtration. An example for bradykinin would be in a sweat gland. Bradykinin is going to bring more blood to sweat gland, as a result, you sweat more. The third chemical / hormone that controls blood vessels size would be serotonin. Serotonin, as you remember, is released from the damaged blood vessels, and what it does is vasoconstriction. The next one is prostaglandin I2 and prostaglandin E. You remember that these two, they are vasodilators. Remember thromboxane A2 and prostaglandin F, they are vasoconstrictor. Remember angiotensin 2 and vasopressin, or ADH, that sit on V1, they are vasoconstrictor. Remember atrial natriuretic peptide, or ANP, that comes from the atrium, is a vasodilator. And finally, endothelin 1 is a vasoconstrictor. So there are some chemicals that can change the size of the vessels, as well as sympathetic and epinephrine can control the size of the vessels and determine how much blood is going to go to which organ. How about parasympathetic? Does parasympathetic has any role here? Well, the role of parasympathetic is very limited. Majority of our blood vessels are innervated by alpha-1 or beta-2 receptors. So blood vessels, mainly, they get sympathetic receptors, not parasympathetic. The biggest exception here would be the blood vessels that go to the penis. The blood vessels that go to the penis, they have parasympathetic receptor, but the neurotransmitter is not acetylcholine. The neurotransmitter in the case of penis would be NO and cause vasodilation. Therefore, we say in the case of parasympathetic of the penis is non-adrenergic, non-cholinergic fiber, because it's using NO as a neurotransmitter, not acetylcholine or norepinephrine. The neurotransmitter is NO. This table shows extrinsic factors that change the size of the vessels. And the last few slides is about something we already covered. it talks about blood flow to specific organs here. In the case of coronary circulation, the blood flow to the heart. Realize when the heart goes to contraction, when the muscle is in contraction, the coronary artery that is in the wall of the muscle also is going to go to contraction. When you contract the muscle, then you're contracting the coronary artery also. So during systole, my coronary artery is under pressure and is going to close off. So why this one is important? Because the question is, how are we going to get blood to the heart when the heart is on contraction and coronary artery closes? Well, the answer is, thankfully, my heart has myoglobin, and this myoglobin can give blood to the heart while the heart is in systole. After heart ends the contraction and relaxes, now we have to give oxygen back to myoglobin, and as a result, my heart is going to show reactive hyperemia. If you use your saving during emergency, you better put that money back. When the heart is on contraction and use the oxygen from myoglobin, when the heart is relaxing, now the coronary artery is going to open more to bring more oxygen in and replenish the myoglobin, the oxygen again for the next round. In the case of cerebral circulation, as I mentioned before, what if some specific area of the brain needs more blood? The answer for that is there are some metabolite that is released from that hyperactive region of the brain that is going to bring more blood to that area. Those metabolites in the case of brain would be potassium, adenosine, or NO. When these three are released in a specific region of the brain, blood to that region is going to increase. So remember, increasing CO2 is going to bring blood to the whole brain, but for a local area of the brain, we're going to use this metabolite. And lastly, remember, astrocyte is a glial cells that also can control blood flow to a specific area of the brain. That is going to bring us to pulmonary circulation. Here is the heart, and here is the pulmonary artery. Pulmonary artery is going to bring blood to the lung for oxygenation. So this blood has a low oxygen. It's going to come to lung to get oxygen. Lung is going to give oxygen to this blood, and then blood with oxygen is going to come back to the left side, yes? So now, think about it. If this blood comes to this part of the lung, and this part of the lung is not getting enough oxygen from outside, then there is no need for blood to come to this segment. So what really happens is this. If blood comes to part of the lung that doesn't get enough oxygen, this artery to this area is going to close off because you don't want to waste this blood to come to the area that there's no oxygen. That's why in this table you can see for pulmonary, it says hypoxia caused vasoconstriction. Let me repeat one more time to make sure you understand. If blood comes to the area of the lung that doesn't get enough oxygen, this blood will be wasted because blood is going to come here for oxygenation, but there is no oxygen. And if there is no oxygen, you're wasting this blood to this area. So therefore, if the PaO2 in the alveolus goes down, then blood flow to that area should go down because it's going to be a waste of blood flow to this area since there is no oxygen. So when the PaO2 goes down, it's going to create vasoconstriction. As a result, blood is going to get shifted to other part of the lung, not to this area because there's no oxygen available here. Regarding renal circulation, I repeat this one so many times, during emergency, kidney is going to lose the privilege, is going to lose autoregulation. What mechanism helps kidney for autoregulation? In a normal situation, there are two reasons. One is a myogenic property, and the second one is called tubuloglomerular feedback. Tubuloglomerular feedback is something that I have to explain in the kidney section, but for now, don't be alarmed. It's not very difficult. I'm going to explain this one in the kidney section. For now, I want you to understand there are two things that can control renal circulation. One is a myogenic control, and the other one is a tubuloglomerular feedback. And lastly, sympathetic is going to decide how much blood is going to go to the skeletal muscle. However, when you're under emergency or when you're doing exercise, skeletal muscle is going to gain autoregulation and it's going to decide how much blood it needs. And vasodilation during activity is due to beta receptors and, of course, a sympathetic with acetylcholine receptors. Under emergency, then skeletal muscle goes to the autoregulation and controls how much blood it needs. And that is going to bring us to the end of cardiac section. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to come back with another set of recording for respiratory system.